Let's talk about one of the trickiest parts of English, something everyone struggles with at some point: irregular verbs. But you know what? Instead of being difficult, I think they're fascinating. They're the language's little rule breakers, and every single one has a story. So let's get into it.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to figure out what these verbs actually are. Then, we'll see how they stack up against the ones that follow the rules. We'll even jump in a time machine to see where they came from. And then, the best part, we'll crack the code on how to actually learn them.
So first things first, what does it even mean for a verb to be irregular? Let's break down what these little grammar rebels are all about. I am willing to bet every single person learning English has asked this exact question. I mean, it should be go'd, shouldn't it? That would follow the pattern, but it's not. And the reason for that is exactly what we're going to unpack today. To get why we say went, we first have to look at the verbs that actually behave themselves. Okay, so most verbs in English are what we call regular. They're the good ones. They're predictable, they're reliable, they make our lives easy. You just take a verb, like walk, and you pop ed on the end to make it past tense. Walk becomes walked. Cook becomes cooked. See? Simple. They just follow the rules. And then you've got these guys, our rule breakers. Irregular verbs just completely ignore that nice, simple ed rule. Nope, they march to the beat of their own drum, and each one has its own special, unique forms for the past tense. And yet, at first, it just looks like chaos. Right, let's put these two types of verbs head to head. When you see them side by side, the difference is just crystal clear. Look at this. On the left, it's so clean, so predictable. Walk, walked, walked. But then look at the other side. Speak doesn't become speaked, no way, it becomes spoke, and then spoken. And the verb go, it just completely changes its identity to went and then gone. This shows you the challenge perfectly. So, just how many of these rebels are we dealing with? Well, in modern English, it's about 200 that we use pretty commonly. Now, that might sound like a huge number, but what's way more important is which verbs they are. And here's the kicker. The most common, most frequently used verbs in the entire English language are all irregular. Think about it. You can't even have a simple conversation without using most of the verbs on this list. That's why we can't just ignore them. They're absolutely essential. So why? Why does English have all these weird verbs? Why didn't they just evolve to follow the ed rule like everyone else? Well, to figure that out, we have to take a quick trip back in time. Honestly, the best way to think about irregular verbs is to see them as language fossils. They're like these ancient little relics, these perfectly preserved echoes from a much, much older version of English. They tell a story. You see, most of them come from what were called strong verbs back in Old English. Way back then, it was totally normal to change a vowel in the middle of a verb to make it past tense. So singin would become sungin. But then history happened. Big things like the Great Vowel Shift completely changed how English sounded. And while lots of verbs adapted to the new ed rule, these super common strong verbs just held on. They kept their old vowel-changing patterns. And that's exactly what we see today when sing becomes sang. It's a fossil from another time. Okay, history lesson's over. Let's get to the important part. Now that we know why they exist, how do you actually learn them without just staring at a giant scary list and trying to memorize it? Here is the secret, okay? Stop trying to memorize them one by one. It's too hard. The real key is to realize that even these rule breakers have their own little secret clubs, their own hidden patterns. If you can learn to spot these patterns, you can learn the verbs in groups, and that is so much easier. Let's start with the easiest group. For these verbs, absolutely nothing changes. Today I cut, yesterday I cut, I have cut. Easy, right? It's the same for put, cost, and hit. This is a great group to learn first because it's such a quick win. Now for a classic pattern, listen to the rhythm of this one. I, a. I sing today, yesterday I sang, I have sung many times. It's a beautiful little progression, right? And it works for drink, drank, drunk, begin, began, begun, swim, swam, swum. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. All right, here's another super common pattern. The vowel changes for the simple past, so speak becomes spoke, but for the past participle, the vowel changes again, and you add an en to the end, spoken. You see it over and over. Break, broke, broken. Write, wrote, written. That little en ending, that's another one of those language fossils, a direct throwback to Old English. And here's one more group for today. This one is all about the sound. The base verbs look pretty different, but in the past, they all share this ought or ought sound. Bring becomes brought, buy becomes bought, think becomes thought, and catch becomes caught. And notice, for this group, the past simple and past participle forms are the same, which is helpful. So, how do you make all this stick? It's simple. First, group the verbs by pattern. Just focus on one group at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. Second, write your own sentences. Something like, today I begin work. Yesterday I began at 9. I have begun a new project. Third, and this is crucial, say your sentences out loud. You have to build that muscle memory. And finally, review. Seriously, 5 minutes every day is a million times better than one long session once a week.
And hey, if you're not totally sold on this whole pattern idea, think about this. Research shows that this is actually how kids who are native speakers learn them too. They make mistakes at first. They say things like good and bringed. But eventually, their brains start to pick up on the patterns, the very same ones we just talked about, and they correct themselves. So you're just consciously doing what the brain does naturally.
So there you have it. These irregular verbs, they're not just random mistakes. They are historical fossils, and they have hidden patterns. And once you learn to see those patterns, mastering them becomes so much easier. So that just leaves me with one question for you. Which one of these patterns are you going to practice first?